Hello, welcome everyone to our panel for the CDAF grant, CDAF standing for Citizen Diplomacy Action Fund. This is a grant through what we call the Fulbright office, the Fulbright folks who distributed monies last spring at the start of the pandemic for projects related to resilience. Directly affected by the pandemic. So we proposed a project in which we could talk with people across the globe who were doing family systems consultation, service delivery, program design, planning. And we have these panels and discussions every 2 weeks. And my name is Laurie Lopez-Charles. I am a family therapist living in Greater Boston in Massachusetts in the US. And I work with a very lovely team. And before I introduce my co-PI, Gameela, I wanted to give Dorcas an opportunity to just say a little bit about herself. She's been working with the team in the second half of our project and would love to have you introduce yourself. So thank you, Dorcas, for a last-minute surprise introduction.
Not a problem. Good morning, everyone. It's morning here. I'm in Silver Spring, Maryland, right outside Washington, D.C. I also am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm doing some teaching, research. My research interest is racial and ethnic health disparities. So I do hope to continue my research at some point down the road. But it's been a joy working with Laurie. I know her from Nova Southeastern University, and I've had many opportunities to collaborate with her. So I'm excited about this opportunity as well.
Great to have you, Dorcas. Thank you. And I'll pass it to Gameela Samarasinghe, who's my colleague in Sri Lanka, to introduce yourself and introduce Tamara. Gameela?
Okay, sure. So welcome everyone. I'm Gameela Samarasinghe. As Laurie said, I'm based in Sri Lanka. I'm not a family therapist. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've been attached to the University of Colombo for more than 20 years now. I'm really happy to see one of my friends here, Aranksha, who also was one of the panelists a few weeks ago. It's very nice to see you here today. It's my pleasure to introduce Tamara.
Hello.
I hope I pronounce your name. I don't. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Maybe you should. Maybe you should say your name, and then I will say the rest.
My name is Tamara Džamonja Ignjatović. It's. I believe it's difficult to pronounce, but okay. Yes. Tamara will be enough.
That's great. So she's a full professor at the Department of Social Policy and Social Work, Faculty of Political Science, and Department of Psychology, Faculty of Philosophy at the University of Belgrade. She has been working for 15 years at the Psychiatric Institute of the Clinical Center of Serbia in Belgrade as a clinical psychologist, focusing on personality assessment, counseling, and family and cognitive behavior therapy. The last 20 years, her interests are communication skills, mediation, mental health, and well-being. And presently, she teaches human behavior in social environment to social work students and mental health to students of psychology. She coordinated and participated in numerous researches and projects for improving professional practice in clinical psychology and social work. In the past 15 years, she has been involved in training of family and victim offender mediation and its application in practice. She is the author and co-author of more than 60 papers and 15 publications and handbooks in Serbia and internationally. Professor Tamara was awarded for her contribution to psychology by the National Psychological Association. It's my pleasure to invite Professor Tamara to make her presentation.
Okay, so I can continue. Okay, first of all, I would like to thank Laurie and Gameela for giving me opportunity to participate as a panelist on your project. And it is a great honor and pleasure for me being with you today. I will talk about individual experiences, well-being and coping strategies during COVID-19 pandemic in relation of restrictive measures in Serbia. The focus of my presentation will be the resilience and importance of family and other social support systems. Obviously, there are a lot of negative reactions to COVID pandemic, but the sample of our study represents mostly a resilient group in a multi-problem context, not just of pandemic, but also due to the problems of socio-economic and political situation in Serbia. So first I will say something about that local context in Serbia during pandemic, and I will later talk about our crucial results. So although the COVID pandemic is a global crisis, countries differ in their pre-pandemic circumstances, as well as the way how they respond to pandemic, which influence to different experiences and outcomes of the crisis. We had the first patient infected with the COVID-19 on March 5th, and state of emergency was declared by the government of Serbia on March 15, which lasted until May 6th. So introduced preventive measures included the closure of borders, public transportation restrictions, lockdown from 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. And during the weekends, lockdown lasted for 60 hours continuously, from 5 p.m. on Friday to 5 a.m. on following Monday. People older than 65 were prohibited from leaving their homes completely, all the time. Later, it was mitigated by allowing them to go on Fridays from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. to go to do grocery or something like that. So they really looked like a ghost in the dark, wandering on empty streets. So that was pretty ridiculous. Everything were closed, and a ban of on gathering of more than 5 people was introduced too. Our data referred to that period. We later have two another peaks of pandemic, but the data related on the period of first crisis. Obviously, this pandemic has effects beside on physical health, on mental health too, mainly because it is widespread, it has uncertain duration, dramatically disrupts everyday life, and provoke anxiety of losing jobs, health, or losing loved ones. Moreover, at the same time, it reduces the availability of some basic protective factors such as socializing and physical closeness. So we conducted study to explore experiences, well-being, and coping strategies of people in such circumstances. The study is based on a qualitative methodology. We, as many other studies, were interested in effects of the situation on the quality of life and mental health of 3 different age groups. Young people in the phase of emerging adulthood, adults, and seniors who were particularly affected by the introduced restrictive measures. In order to better understand their specific experiences during the pandemic and lockdown, we conducted the interviews focusing at 3 main topics: the characteristics of life context before the pandemic, concerning work, study, and different activities, peer and family relations, free time, etc. Then changes in life quality during the pandemic, their emotional reactions and coping strategies, and their expectations of the future, how the pandemic could affect their or other people's life in the long run. Our sample consisted of 52 participants. None of them, nor their close family members, had been infected with COVID-19 before data collection, which was during April and early May this year. We interviewed 15 typical emerging adults, aged from 18 to 26. They are all unemployed students, still dependent of their parents and living with them. Also, we interviewed 21 adults aged from 31 to 53 who are employed, mostly married, and have children. And finally, we have 16 seniors aged from 65 to 87 years, retired. Some of them were still professionally active, high educated, from a large city. 6 of them lives alone. Almost half of them don't have children. So they are financially secure, live independently, mostly healthy, and will manage chronic disease that they have. So our results of thematic analysis was divided in 5 main themes. First is a disruption in everyday life and functioning. Then reaction to the pandemic as a health crisis. Third one is reaction to restrictive measures as a source of frustration. Fourth is coping strategies. And finally, expectations of the post-pandemic future. So I will talk about each of themes. First theme was that we explored was how pandemic and restrictive measures disrupt everyday life and functioning. Obviously, there were significant changes in various life domains, but slightly different for different age groups. For emerging adults, for students, changes were mostly related to their studies and disrupted socializing for many reasons, like closing universities, poor organization of online classes at that time, a lot of uncertainty regarding midterms, exams and other obligations, shift to home-based e-learning, inability to spend time with friends, and spending much more time at home with parents. Also, students who returned to their homes from residence didn't have suitable space for studying. The lack of daily structure and the lack of technical resources for online studying for some of them represented considerable obstacles to pursue education for many students. It resulted in worry, anxiety, procrastination, decline of motivation for learning, etc. In a view of importance of peer relation for young people, they missed in-person contact with friends the most. Despite the usually use online communication, most of them acknowledge that contact via social media cannot fully replace spending time in person. For adults, changes in daily organizations were different. Most of them started to work from home, which was very difficult for them to work and at the same time to take care of younger children. If they had to go to work, they couldn't leave children at home. Kindergartens and school were closed too. And they couldn't rely on their parents to look after the grandchildren due to the lockdown. Some of them lost their jobs temporarily, but at the same time, it was a chance for them to spend more time with their children and families. If they moved to the country, they felt that they were on prolonged vacation, but they still were very concerned about their future. And seniors They were in unique situation because they were under complete lockdown. They were not allowed to go out to take a walk or run daily errands, including getting grocery or taking their pension from bank. If they don't have somebody to do that for them, it was very hard to satisfy their basic needs. All of that led to feeling of injustice and violation of human rights that affected their dignity. Those who were more active before pandemic and familiar with technology for online communication found more opportunities to structure their time and maintain social contact despite physical distancing. Seniors who lived in the villages or homes with a garden were able to keep up with the routine, to spend time outdoor and keep contact with their neighbors, so they were affected less. All these groups were affected differently. Nevertheless, all of their lives changed to the great extent. So we were also interested in how much they worried about their health. Beside that, pandemic is potential health crisis for senior due to the possibility of serious consequences for their health, even life. And for young people, it was elevated risk of spreading and getting COVID. But concern for one's own health appeared rarely in all groups. Generally, they are not prone to worry about themselves. A moderate healthy concern prevails, which enable adequate responsible behavior. At the same time, participants worried about others. Younger people worried about possibility of infecting older family members, and older people worried about younger ones who are going out and were exposed to risk more. We also explore reactions to the restrictive measures. They were experienced as oppressive. The curfew and lockdown did not seem justified, particularly regarding the measure demanding complete quarantine for all people over 65. The inability to go outside increased the frustration and tension. Suddenly, they were spending much more time with their family members, which was very good for some, but could be very difficult for others, depending on the quality of relationships. On the other hand, older people who live alone was prone to risk of loneliness. Patronizing attitude towards seniors by our government and the media provokes feeling of disrespect and humiliation. So some of them broke rules or disobeyed some measures without jeopardizing personal health or health of others. I can tell something more about that, what they did in discussion. It was their way of taking control of situation that deprived them. For younger one, who felt particularly deprived by shutting down cafes, clubs, canceling parties, trips, disobeying measures was more a matter of expressing freedom and rebellion. The inconsistency and inaccuracy of information contributed to distrust in the system and the media and deepened fear and sense of uncertainty. Some participants perceived that the reports on increase in number of infected people was presented in a biased manner. That led to a stricter selection of information, as well as the partial or full avoidance of information. The decision to stop intensively looking for information was not to deny the seriousness nor withdraw from the situation, but rather a protective act to avoid getting overwhelmed by upsetting content. Our findings also refers to how they deal with the crisis, what kind of coping strategies did they use. After facing the initial difficulties, almost all participants adapted to new life changes more or less successfully. They rationally evaluated situation and followed the preventive measures. Although the pandemic as an external source of stress was beyond their control, with responsible behavior, assessing the risk realistically, and following the prescribed preventive measures, they enhance control over situation as much as possible. This strategy was most efficient to diminish anxiety. Participants also tried to engage proactively in various activities. They structured their days in a worthwhile manner by fulfilling existing duties or starting new activities. Focusing on positive aspects of the situation was one of the most frequently used strategies. Participants were able to enjoy in a small, mundane things. It was also opportunity to catch up on what is usually missed, but was previously unattainable. Some of them were able to turn to intrinsically motivating activities such as practicing new hobbies, drawing, programming, learning languages, reading books, exercise, cooking, house tidying, gathering, whatever. Gardening, sorry. Some people saw the state of emergency as an opportunity to relax and to find a peace that might have been missing in regular circumstances. The opportunity to spend more time with family members in joint activities led to better family relations and re-establishing routine, such as family meals and other things. This led us to the most important coping strategy and the source of resilience for all of them, which is social communication and support of family and friends. The essential need for frequent contact with other people was recognized as crucial for mental health and well-being. That includes concrete help for seniors from family members, friends, and neighbors who supplied them and expressed high level of solidarity and altruism. Also, the informal emotional support or just exchanging of experiences via cell phones, Vibers, Skype, or different social media, Zoom, Facebook, Twitter, etc., were the most frequent activities in that period. There were a lot of messages with humoristic content and humor, as we know, as healthy defense mechanisms in a difficult situation that we cannot change. Insufficient activities or strategies appeared significantly less, just from time to time, and primarily in the younger group, like catastrophizing, somatization, withdrawal, passivation, minimization, or denial risk. The last part of our data refer to there's expectation of the post-pandemic future. The anticipation of the global adverse crisis effects was predominant, even though they were simultaneously hope that their personal life go back to normal. Many of them were pessimistic about traveling in future or about changes in a social relation and limiting contact with others, which could result in more profound sense of alienation. Students worried about possibility to continue studies. Adults were concerned about negative consequences to their jobs, families' financial stability, and seniors didn't worry about their personal future. They felt that they have already fulfilled their lives and have no more plans for future. They can't lose their jobs, feel independent of economic crisis, but they are more concerned about future of the young generation. Nearly all participants forecast a dramatic global economic crisis, particularly threatening for our region, which is one of the most economically underdeveloped parts of Europe. Some of them particularly noted the consequences on physical and mental health. They believed that individuals with other somatic and mental illness aside from COVID-19 would be affected in the future much more. But they also recognized the opportunity for some positive changes based on lessons learned from actual experiences. Whether their focus was on negative or the positive aspects of the post-pandemic future, the participants tend to see those changes as temporal and anticipated the life resuming back to normal. The current crisis was situated within a historical perspective, which indicated that humankind overcomes crises every time. So there is no reason to expect anything different in the current situation. It enables the normalization of the pandemic crisis and points out the historical evidence of resilience of humanity. So we can conclude that family and social support play a vital protective role in the lives of participants from all age groups. Besides that, presence of proactive coping skills like responsible behavior, compensatory activities, attitude of acceptance, life with all bad and good things, humor, etc., as well as the moderate level of optimism, makes the individual more resilient during this pandemic. So that would be all of what I would like to share with you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So we have lots of folks here. I haven't seen any questions in the chat yet. So at this point, we'll ask and invite questions for our speaker. And you can vocalize it, unmute your mic, or if it's easier to text it, that's also cool. So we'll wait as the host until we hear from some of the folks online.
I'm aware that Sanja couldn't contact us, so I take a little bit more time. So,
oh, of course, and we will. For those of you invited by Sonia, we had some technical issues. She's here, but she's not here, which happens a lot on WebEx. And we will definitely have her for another panel. So no worries about that.
Okay.
I can start with a question, or more a comment and curiosity. What you mentioned about youth and social media and using internet. This is something I'm hearing a lot about here in the U.S. A worry about what's happening to young people during the pandemic who are focused so much on social media. So this is just something I've heard in the last week. A lot of clinicians concerned about this. There's lots of research in family therapy about the use of ICTs in a very positive way, not necessarily a deficit. But I think it's a little bit in the mix. People are wondering, like, what does this mean? So I noticed that you pointed that out, and I wonder if you could just say a little bit more about what you learned on that.
Yeah, not just young people, even in groups of senior who are familiar with internet and these tools for communication. All of them use so much internet and spend a lot of time on internet, online communication. So it's not just typical for young generation, it becomes typical for all generations, I'm afraid. And as any other things, it has good sides and bad sides. If we don't have these tools for communication, the whole pandemic will be much harder for all of us, for studies, for older people who are isolated, for students, for schools, for everything. But at the same time, all of them were aware that it couldn't replace direct contact, in live contact, in-person contact. So they miss it very much. Probably younger people are more flexible and could easily forget on that kind of communication, and it could be easily adapted to that online communication instead of in-person contact. But I think that all of them miss really socializing in life.
Thank you.
I would have one or two questions for my colleague.
Please.
It's first of all, I would like to thank you for sharing all this information with us. I feel almost like at home. Some of it I already knew, but I wonder, maybe I missed something during your presentation, but I wonder the way you collected the sample. I assume that it was online predominantly, but can you tell us a little bit more? Who were, how did you conduct the study? Was it mainly in Belgrade, or your sample was country?
Yes. It was highly selected sample. So it is not representative at all, which is not very important for qualitative research. So that is why we have a sample who is pretty resilient. We contact our friends to make a contact for us with their friends or relatives. So there were people who were around us, but not very close friends or relatives. So we know them because it was locked down and we couldn't contact directly. But at the same time, we could talk with them by phone or by Zoom, or even students, because there were 5, 6, 7, 8 researchers. So some of them interviewed younger people so they can take a walk and talk about issue, and I interviewed older people, seniors, so some interviews made here in Belgrade by phone, and something I did in a place where I have a country house, just to see what is the difference between city and village. So we collect a sample from everywhere, but very selective. Mostly of them were from cities.
Did you standardize your questionnaire? Was there a questionnaire at all?
It was not a questionnaire, it was interview. It was interview, have some thematic sections, but it was very open for different experiences, and it must be different for different age groups because they have specific arrangement in life. Yeah.
Did you also have opportunity, did your examiners express the wish to consult you as well? Did you have a space and time for any therapeutic interventions?
After interviews with the same people, no. For students, we provide a counseling center at our faculty of philosophy. So everybody can contact us, all students from university, and they are under our supervision. So students from master studies and doctorate level did counseling with younger students who need help. For the group of older people, they can contact us, but they didn't need that at that phase. I must say that it is a limitation of study because it is in the first peak of pandemic. It was a shock-like situation, but very soon we all expected it will be finished, and summer came and everything looks pretty optimistic at that time. So they don't need at that time they don't need any kind of help. Because I know some of them, I heard what happens with some of them later, but it is not connected particularly with COVID.
Thank you.
I think there was a question on the chat, but Manju was going to post one, but I don't see it. Unless, does anyone see that? Or Manju, if you can, you said your connection's not stable, so I don't know if you can speak it.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see it. Or other questions while we see if Manju has something.
Just a
Yeah.
comment. I mean,
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am. My name is Stanka, and I'm from Belgrade. And I want to say thank you, Tamara, for these great things you did. I'm sorry because of technical difficulties, I was not able to join, and I heard only last 10 minutes of your exposition of your research. I just want to share this. Probably I work as a therapist in New York, and I want to share this my concern about how young people specifically handle this situation, and older too. So taking all those hard stuff and using technology in therapy, I think how much we're missing in the how we miss possibility to really help people, this miss of contact. And so I don't know, did you find that hard when you did your research? Or
Yes, it was obviously hard, as I first of all to say hello to Stanka, and I'm so glad that I can meet you at least like that. So that is at the same time the answer to your question. If we don't have internet, we won't meet again easily like that. So we worked together many years ago in Belgrade. I just want to tell everybody that. Yes, we missed in live contacts. Definitely, it can't be replaced by internet or online communication. But at the same time, it is the best we had. It would be much more harder if we don't have at least in online communication. So that's it, I think.
yeah, you're right. This I think it's hard, but at least we can see each other. We can continue working with people. We can see friends and family. This is really, really, technology help us. That I agree. And maybe take a time to adjust to hardship, so we can do more.
It connect us, also it separate us. If we have opportunity to contact in person, probably it separate us. But when we don't have that opportunity, it help us to connect and keep our social contacts and social support and everything else. So
thank you for being present in the world scene.
Tamara, just a few observations, comments. Now, we as parents sometimes are always complaining that our children are all the time on watching screens, and then and now the school is online, and they are again watching screens and spending so much time in front of screens. How do we cope with that? That's one question, right? And the other one is, we've been doing work internationally, doing research with colleagues from other countries and traveling overseas for meetings. And now we're continuing these international collaborations, and we are meeting online and are working just as, or maybe not just as, but almost as efficiently as before. So in the future, there might not be a reason for us to travel for meetings anymore when we are doing international collaborations. We'll be continuing to, we might continue to work online and saying that, it's just as efficient. Just, I would like to know your thoughts about these.
Yeah, for looking on screens all the time, it is pretty hard, and it's really not something that we like so much, and even we worked much more. I don't know, is it your experience also, but I spend much more time working when we have started to work like that. I don't know why, because it is the same duties and same obligations, but somehow it seems that we have to write much more mails than if we sit and discuss something on a meeting. If we don't have Zoom for meeting or something like that. So we spent a lot of time. I agree with you. And I think it affected even our sight or provoke headaches. I have that experience with my sitting on in front of desktop. But for professional meeting and conferences, I'm afraid that it could be partly replaced, which is easier for people who cannot provide themselves to travel, because now you can, let's say, this kind of communication, we should all come to States and pay for travel, which is not available for many of people. But at the same time, it will be really pitied if we don't meet on conference in person. I mean, it's not the same. The quality of exchange ideas, and it's much easier and better in a natural way. So the answer is similar. It has some advantages and a lot of disadvantages. So So we have to balance them.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Tamara, there was a question from Manju in India.
Mhm.
I don't know if you can see it. If family members were in different locations during the pandemic, if
Mhm.
families had conflict or relational conflict that was disruptive, how did the pandemic impact those? Did it distance, resolve, or minimize the relational conflict? Great question.
Yeah. It could minimize it because they were focused at each other, but also it can provoke much more conflict because they were used to avoid each other. So when they face all the times, that could be really very hard for them. In our sample, we didn't have those cases. Most of our participants were from supportive families and or they live alone, like seniors that I examined. So they really have a great relation with family members or with neighbors or friends. So it was very helpful for them. But we talked about elevated level of domestic violence in Serbia, probably in all other places during pandemic. So that could be a great problem if you can't go out, and under these circumstances, not just old conflict are how can I say present, but the new conflict, new frustration due to COVID are some kind of new stress and new frustration, so it could be more difficult for them, not just old conflicts. If I explain what you ask.
Thank you, Tamara. Does anyone have any other questions or comments to make?
Mm-hmm. Somebody asked about vaccination in our country. Yes, it started, but very slowly. I mean, few thousand people probably were vaccinated by. So it was very slow.
Was priority given to healthcare
To all seniors
seniors?
and
Okay.
yes, seniors in institution. And after that, second group is doctors, of course, and medical assistants and all people in health system. So, and later will be others, probably teachers in school. And so we think that it will be a very slow process.
Are they resisting, or are they
It's not mandatory. Sorry?
Are people there, resistant for the vaccination, for the vaccines, or they are willing to go to get the vaccine for the COVID?
Depends. Some of them are very anti-vaccinate, against vaccination, And but also a lot of people are aware that it is the only things that they could do. They're suspicious about vaccination, but they were aware that there is no other way to prevent COVID pandemic. But there are a lot of people who are very, very suspicious, and they don't want to take vaccine. So it is not mandatory.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? There's another. I think, so usually what happens at this point, we try to wrap up the recording at least, but we stick around often and have more of a chat. These are ongoing conversations. So I want to take a moment though to thank you for your presentation and the research, sharing your research with us. This kind of research is so important. It's so important for us to do in a way. I really appreciate the qualitative work that you did and to document and then bring to the table so that there's a better response across the globe in any sector that has an influence on how families survive and thrive during a crisis and on a daily basis. So I really appreciate that you came, and thank you so much, everyone who's present. Our deepest gratitude, and so I'm going to stop the recording here and say my piece about really missing Sonia. We're so sorry that Sonia's not here. Well,
Yes.
she's here and not